to keep on keeping on with task service and writing the spec tests for it. So in the last video, we just finished create task. So now we're going to move on. I'm going to minimize these functions, and we're up to update task. Okay. So update task is a method that takes a field value, user ID, and task ID. First, it finds the task that it needs to update using the task ID and the user ID. Okay. And if the task to update exists, then it updates the field with the value, and then it saves it and returns the user story ID for that task. Otherwise, it throws a bad exception error. Okay, so it's doing a lot of things, but that's okay. We can go ahead and write some tests for it. All right, so we're going to start with it, and then we're going to say update task, because that's the name of our function that we are testing, and it should update a task. So here a task can have a name or a status, and it can update either. I think I'm going to write a different test suite for both. So let's start with updating a task name. Should update a task name and return the corresponding user story ID. All right, now let's go ahead and write the function that will test it. All right, so as always, we are going to look at inputs and outputs. So we have 4 inputs, so we're going to say const field, and then field is going to be name. And then we're going to have const value. So let's do task1 edited. Then we are going to do user ID. And I'm going to say 15 just for fun. And then const excuse me, const, what are we at now? Task ID. Let's just say 1. Okay, so essentially this part of the function is we're trying to look to make sure that, I think I said user story before. I keep accidentally switching user and user story. But we want to make sure that the task that we're trying to update belongs to the user that's trying to update it. It won't be too much of a problem unless someone's trying to like make a Postman or Axios request on their own. But just to be safe, we are going to kind of use the relations in order to make sure that the task that we're finding to update belongs to the user who wants to update it. So the user who wants to update this task name is user 15, and the task they want to update is task 1. Okay? Now, if all works out, okay, we are going to get a user story ID out of this that corresponds to the task. So I'm going to write user story ID is equal to, and then I'll just say 1 as well, just because. All right. But this is not exactly, we are going to have more data, like fake data that we have to use too, but I'm going to kind of keep moving on and it will make sense in a second. All right, so we're updating a task, okay? And so the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to find the task, okay? So we have to spy on the mock task repository, find 1, okay? But see how it says find 1 and we don't have that in our thing here, so we're going to add it. I'm looking to see if there's find 1 by. All right, so it looks like we're not using find 1 by, so we can get rid of it. But we are going to use find 1, so I'm going to Okay, so here we are going to say spy on mock repository, mock task repository, find one, and then we are going to mock the return value. Okay, so we need now to make a task to update. Okay, so we're going to say const task to update is going to be equal to name. I'm going to say task 1, and then we're going to have status, say to do. All right. And because we are because we're adding the relations of the user story, then we would get the user story back as well. So I'm going to add as task here. And then that way I can say user story ID is equal to 1, because the user story ID here is equal to 1. Okay. Perfect. So that's the task that we're going to want to update. And when we call this find one method, we want to return the task to update. All right, next we're looking at if there's a task to update, we're going to update it, which there is a task to update. It's right here. So we're going to update it. So then we are going to need const updated task. Don't need to capitalize that. All right. And then I pretty much can just copy this. And we are editing the name, so I can write edited. Okay, and that's going to be the updated task. All right, and that is what we want to come back from this save. So we want to say just.spy on mock task repository. We're going to spy on the save method, and we're going to mock a return value, and that's going to be updated task. Okay. Then it's returning task to update user story ID. Okay, so the way that we're going to check this is we are actually going to now say const result is equal to await service dot update task field value user ID task ID. Okay, then we expect our result to equal our user story ID, which is 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and run our tests and see how we're doing. All right, and it looks like we are doing good. So now we can add some of our other expect statements on here. So we would also expect mock test repository find one. And we expect that to have been called. Okay, then we also expect mock task repository dot find one to have been called with, so let's take a look. We want it to be called with all of this. All right, we then expect mock task repository dot save to have been called, and we expect mock task repository dot save to have been called with task to update or updated task. All right, let's run our tests again and see how things go. And yay, we passed it. Okay, so this is going to be update task. This is going to be for we can correctly update a name. All right, so now what we want to do is we actually want to copy this and paste it, because we're not done testing updated task, because you should also be able to update a task status and return the corresponding user ID. So hopefully this is pretty quick, because we should just be able to change task status. Let's change the value to in progress. We'll keep the same user and task ID. Task 1 to do, that looks good. So this would still be task 1. This would just be in progress now. All right. I think that's good. I'm going to call the test though and see where we're at. All right. So update test should update a test status and return the corresponding user ID. Perfect. Okay. So now we actually want to copy this one more time and paste it in, because you see that we have another test case, and that's when we actually don't find a task to update. So this one should say should throw error if task is not found. Okay, so we can leave name, we can leave all of this, but instead task to update, it's going to be undefined. All right, if it's undefined, you can see that we never actually call this save, so we can get rid of it. And we also never have an updated task then. Okay. So we're going to still spy on 5.1, but we're going to mock return value undefined. And we won't be returning a user story ID. So we expect the result. So we don't actually need to do this call with the result, because the result is not going to exist. Okay, so what we want to do instead is we want to change some of this. First, save is never going to be called, so we can get rid of that. Okay, I'm also going to just get rid of I'm going to leave those there. But we're going to actually make the call within here instead. So what we're going to do is we're going to say expect async. And we're going to say await service dot update task. And then we're going to pass in field value. Let's change this user ID to 5. It doesn't really matter because we're not doing anything with it, but if you want to read through this, it will make more sense that in the other ones, the user ID corresponded was 15, not 5, okay? And we don't expect it to equal anything, but we expect that it is going to be rejected. So the way that we are going to do that is we're going to say rejects dot, and then we're going to say to throw bad request exception. Okay, I'm going to comment out these so that way we can just check to see where we're at so far. All right, so it passed. Let's go ahead and comment these back in and see how we're doing. Perfect. All right, so that is going to be our update task, okay? So the next one that we're going to do is we're going to do delete task, okay? And I think we will go ahead and handle that in the next video. See you in a bit.